places that don't just hold history, they hold echoes. Echoes of discipline turned into punishment, of reform that blurred into control, and of children who entered hoping to be fixed and left forever changed if they left at all. Tonight on The Haunting Truth, we're going to talk about the Glen Mills School in Pennsylvania. The Old Reformatory is what we like to call it around here. It's one of the oldest juvenile reform institutions in the United States, and it was originally founded in the early 1800s under Quaker reform principles. But to understand what happened inside the walls, you have to go back all the way to the beginning. So, this is our episode of The Haunting Truth. I am Jen, and my hostess at the mostest, as always, is Woo.
Woo.
And I definitely have to do a disclaimer for this one. So, this is the house that reform built. This episode contains discussions of institutional abuse allegations, physical violence, sexual assault claims, psychological trauma, and references to burial and death investigation tied to juveniles. Listener discretion is strongly advised. This is for entertainment purposes. However, some of the facts that we do have in this case are based on factual journalism that is cited within this article and documentation, just to give you
Yeah.
guys a heads up. So this is going to be a heavy one,
Also,
guys.
it sounded kind of heavy
Um,
leading in.
yeah,
All right.
unfortunately. So
I'll
as I
grab
always like to
myself a teddy
say,
bear.
I know the path to hell is always paved with good intentions. So let's start with those good intentions initially
Sounds
for
like the
this
beginning of
one.
the Eastern State Penitentiary.
Pretty much. Very, very similar. So, in the early 1700s and early 1800s, Quaker reformers believed crime was not born from evil, but from environment. They pushed a radical idea for their time. If you isolate a child from corruption, provide structure, labor, silence, and reflection, very similar to Eastern State Penitentiary, you
Mhm.
will guide them towards moral correction. Now, this philosophy helped inspire early American reformatories like the Philadelphia House of Refuge and other industrial schools. But historians later note a darker truth. What began as moral rehabilitation quickly evolved into systems of confinement for poor, orphaned, and troubled youth, often without due process or oversight. So by the time institutions like Glen Mills emerged in 1826, reform had become institutionalized, and a discipline often replaced compassion. Now, the history of Quaker education begins with George Fox. He founded the Religious Society of Friends in the 17th century during a time of social and religious upheaval in England. Now, Fox believed that the inherent that of God in every person, which means our greater good, would lead to Quaker practices of equality, compassion, and nonviolence. And the first Quaker schools were established in 1668 in England, and they focused on practical skills, ethical principles, rather than classical studies. Now, as we all know, Pennsylvania, if you've listened to this podcast, is founded by William Penn. And William Penn believed in the Quakers arriving in America that they brought educational practices with them, and he allowed them to open the first Quaker school in America, and it was founded in 1689 in Philadelphia. Now, it reflected the beliefs of providing accessible education to all, including scholarships to poor students, the inclusion of girls. As Quaker communities grew, more schools were established, often in conjunction with meeting houses. It emphasized a holistic approach to education that links spiritual, society, and intellectual development. So, all in all, it was actually one of the first educational institutions in the New World. And it was pretty amazing. As it said, it educated
Mhm.
girls, and it really had a good foundation. And there is still Quaker Foundations and Friends schools that are open in Philadelphia, as well as where we are in Delaware today, that are really,
Mhm.
really great schools. They're one of the best in the area. But as everything happens, once things start getting institutionalized and government gets involved, it can turn very tragic. Now, one good example of this, or a bad example, I should say, is Quakers played a significant role in establishing boarding schools and reformatory schools. one for reformatory for children who got into trouble, quote unquote, but most of that turned out to be poor or disadvantaged children. And the other was indigenous schools in the United States beginning in the early 1796. Those schools were aimed to assimilate Native American children
Yeah.
into European culture, often with harsh and cohesive methods. While some Quaker schools sought to provide educational support, unfortunately, the legacy of these institutions, often complex and painful, contributed to the loss of Indigenous identity and cultures. So, as we can see, there's a good side and a bad side to everything. And unfortunately, when it came to poor and disadvantaged and Indigenous people, it did not serve them well,
Although
unfortunately. So,
to to your point though, the intention was good. It was meant to educate
yes,
them and provide them some things and give them some stability and structure and integrate into overarching society. So uh, I can see the intentions. I can see the
yes.
intentions.
That's why we always say the path to hell is paved with good intentions,
Yep.
because that is definitely what happened in these specific scenarios. And the
Okay.
Glen Mills School was no exception. It is located in Delaware County, Pennsylvania. It was operated for nearly 2 centuries.
Really, I didn't think we had any schools open that long.
Yes.
Okay.
So for decades, it was publicly praised. Well, this one was opened in 1825. So,
Mm,
or excuse me,
wow.
1826. Yeah.
Okay.
So it was a very old school. As I said, it was owned by the Quakers. And for decades, it was publicly praised for being the model of juvenile rehabilitation. It had structure, discipline, and it was supposed to be effective. So it was said to be the Harvard of reform schools.
Okay. I'm gonna guess they didn't charge as much as Harvard does for a year there.
No, no. But beneath the reputation, there was a very different story was forming. So at first it was supposed to, and it is actually for the longest time was touted as being a very big athletic school, for
Okay.
one. So it is actually a place where NFL teams recruit from.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's interesting.
It was very interesting. And then you'll kind of see how that could be the case and some of the things that may have happened that contributed to it. Now, in 2019, the Pennsylvania Department of Human Services ordered the emergency removal of all students after allegations of systemic abuse and regulatory violations. The
Mhm.
institution's license was revoked shortly thereafter. Now, what do you think? People would say what led up to this? Well, students in the lawsuit described a consistent pattern spanning decades of physical beatings, sexual assault, psychological intimidation, punishment for reporting abuse, isolation, and threats. One lawsuit described this facility as a house of horrors.
Mm.
Multiple plaintiffs said the abuse was not isolated, but it was routine. You were beaten, then silenced. You were thrown to the ground, stomped, and choked. Now, accounts span for multiple generations of students dating back to the 1970s throughout the 2010s. Now, more than 300 students have joined the lawsuit since the first 5 men stepped forward. So initially it was just 5 men. Now it's become over 300 students that are
Wow.
in this lawsuit. Yes.
Wow.
Now, the allegations are horrifying. Some of the kids you would think did something horrible to earn their way into Glen Mills Reform School, but you would be wrong. So, as I said, Glen Mills was an athletic powerhouse. Some star athletes in their high schools earned going to Glen Mills just because of truancy. Yes.
I
So,
mean,
if you were a
that would have put
Philadelphia
us both there. Yeah. Hmm.
Yeah, if you were a Philadelphia star athlete and you were not showing up to school and you thought that you were going to have some leniency, what they would do is they
They
would put
draft you to
you
the reform
in,
school? Wow.
draft you to the reform school. And that's supposed.
Right.
Supposedly that is the case. That is what one student had stated. A lot of students came from poor single family households all over the country, but also outside of Philadelphia where they were athletes. But Philadelphia itself paid $53,000 a year to this per student to be part of this rehabilitation program.
So they were charging as much as Harvard at some point. if it was 53,000 a year, like
Yeah,
back
so
then.
Philadelphia was being charged $53,000 a year per student for them to put them in the Glen Mills Reform School.
And you really weren't kidding with the 200 years. I mean, this just went in the 2019, like within the
Yeah.
last 10 years, that's when they
Yep.
still open today or they shut down, shut down.
I will get to that. So
Okay.
they themselves have been shut down, but there still is a pilot program that is currently on the grounds.
Okay. I'll hold my questions until we get there. This is
Yeah,
ridiculous.
it
Okay.
is. Now, interviews and legal filings for former residents describe similar experiences. One student recalled being beaten by staff after reporting misconduct. Other described the routine violence in housing units where children were allegedly restrained and assaulted by staff. Even decades apart, survivors describe the same pattern of violence in processing rooms and isolated areas, staff retaliation against whistleblowers, and a code of silence enforced through fear. Everybody knew and nobody stopped it, is what one eyewitness said. Now, what really started this investigation? Now,
Hmm.
in July of 2018, um, the report is from, and this report is from September that I'm reading. Two former counselors at a suburban Philadelphia reform school have been charged with assault of a 17-year-old student. Police say, and this is alleged, that 35-year-old Patrick Jamison Rackett and 31-year-old Christopher Medina assaulted the teen on July 19th. Charges were filed against Medina and Rackett. The boy reportedly was being choked and body slammed during an assault at the Glen Mills Schools for Boys in Delaware County.
Hmm.
Police say that 6'4" tall, 320-pound Medina slammed the
Jesus.
student to the ground and then allegedly used his entire body weight to apply pressure to the teen's elbow.
How
But the assault, go ahead.
I don't understand the evil that sits in people's heads. Like how how? How could you I don't
Yep.
understand.
And it gets worse. It
Okay.
doesn't stop there. Um, the next, they say that Racket repeatedly punched the student in the head,
Hmm.
as witnessed by about 30 people and recorded by several cameras. They literally beat the breath out of this boy.
Hmm.
And it shows that he was participating in a group project when an argument involving the victim began. Surveillance video shows Medina slapping the victim in the head several times, as I said, lifting him from a seat, throwing him to the ground, and then punching him in the chest, causing him to have difficulty breathing.
Good
Then
Lord.
Racket grabs the victim by the face and starts punching him repeatedly while the victim is seated on a couch in a different room
And this is all on camera?
on camera.
I mean, these guys,
Yes.
did they not know or did they just not care?
Well, he was taken to the hospital. So this was promptly self-reported. So basically, the school had to report this incident. I think they broke his jaw, and he had to be transported to the hospital.
Oh, poor
This
kid.
incident did not uphold any stringent ethical procedures, is what they were saying. The two counselors were terminated. They both were released on $200,000 bail.
Hmm.
And it goes on to say in the article that Philadelphia has stopped sending children who've committed crimes to Glen Mills since the assault accusations emerged last month. So this is, and then an expose broke in Glen Mills Reform School of February of 2019 by Lisa Gardner of the Philadelphia Inquirer, which caused the closure in 2 months. So basically, this came out and they started investigating. And they were like,
Hmm.
we can't send any other boys here until we complete the investigation. And then Lisa Gardner did an expose from the Philadelphia Inquirer, and she basically blew the lid off of it. And it got everybody in the state to look at it, and they just shut it down and closed it within 2 months of her expose.
Wow. Wow.
Yes. Now, in the expose, so by April of 2019, the Department of Human Services announced that all 14 licenses issued to Glen Mills were revoked. There was documented instances of abuse against former students of this residential school. It also cited gross incompetence, negligence, and misconduct in operating the facility. So in the past 18 months alone, Glen Mills has been formally visited, inspected, and reviewed more than 150 times by different outside entities, including numerous state and counties. They said that they found no signs of long-term standing abuse except their own documentation, and they were stunned. So basically, when they reviewed all of the information and the school said, oh, here's our plan moving forward, they're like, this is not good enough. And within 10 days, they shut it down.
So,
So,
just to recap, they're saying
mhm,
they've been visited over 150 times in the last year and a half by different
yes.
entities, and no findings happened
They
until,
said that they discovered were trivial and they found no signs of long-standing physical abuse per our documentation is what was cited in April of 2019. However, when they looked at like when the person did this expose,
yeah.
they like blew the lid off of everything.
So these 150 times that they were visited, like nobody really said
Yeah.
anything until it was on camera and this
Yes.
reporter picked it up. And
Yeah, she basically she got a hold of this
well, kudos to Lisa Gardner.
documentation about what happened and she just started digging in.
Good for her. This
And
is
so by
why
February,
we like journalists.
yeah. And by February of 2019, that's when she did her expose and they started digging in more, but they were like, we're just gonna shut it down. Like the state could not take the chance of anything happening any
Hmm.
further with this
Yeah,
place.
that's crazy.
Um, yeah. So the Inquirer investigation published in February described a culture of physical abuse at the school, alleged that the school leaders turned a blind eye to beatings and failed to vet or train counselors. The allegations included several beatings for students who had minor infractions, a staffer breaking a boy's jaw after the student made a joke about his sister, other boys
Jeez.
getting choked for running away, broken bones, serious bruises, and threats to warning students not to talk. And then even when they were transported to the hospital, they were told to blame their injuries on athletics.
Oh, I was gonna say, how many times did they go to the hospital? I mean, it probably, unless they seriously had to, right?
Right. And all
Just,
of these are allegations. And I
right.
do have my sources, but I just want to put these are allegations.
Yep.
But in the past 5 years, at least 13 staffers at Glen Mills had been fired, and dozens more have been retrained or reprimanded over assaults on 15 students at the school, the newspaper reported.
Wow. That's,
And the interesting thing is that students didn't just come from Pennsylvania, as I stated, they came from as far as Germany, Switzerland, Austria, Bermuda, because it was a
oh,
top tier athletic program that yielded NFL recruits.
I wonder how many NFL football players are out there today that came from Glen Mills.
I'm not 100% sure. I found two, I believe,
Okay.
two or three, but I'm not 100%
I mean,
of
because if they
how
were
many
up and valid
exactly.
until 2019, they're probably, there's,
Yeah, there's probably quite a few more than what I
yeah,
found.
wow. And I
Now,
wonder if they're part of
interesting,
this 300 men. Sorry.
yeah. And so they did, in fact, close the school down, as I
Hmm.
said. In 2023, a settlement established a compensation for survivors and acknowledged systemic harm within their institution. Um, Now, however, a new entity called the Clock Tower Schools has been approved to operate at the former Glen Mills site
Okay.
in January of 2023. So the Pennsylvania Department of Human Resources reached a settlement with the granted them a provisional 2-year license to run a residential day treatment program for a maximum of 20 court-ordered boys. So it's only a day program, and there is 20 of them.
Oh, what happened to all the other students that they had?
So
Like, where did
all
they
of them were
go?
dispersed. They were all dispersed to different places.
Mm, okay.
Yeah.
And then, like, you know what? We're just gonna let you do it again. I bet you they had some politician friends
Yeah.
involved in that. They had to have. Like, how do you go through all of this and then, like, you know what? We're gonna let you do it during the day.
Now, what I found was interesting. So this place has been operating qu for quite a few years,
Hmm.
and it is a huge campus. Like it is impressive. Excuse me. It looks like an Ivy League school. This
Hmm.
campus is extremely impressive. Um, but there's one thing that most people don't know about this property and all of the fanfare and the huge, stadium and everything else. There is a grave site
Mm.
on this property. Now, in many reform schools' history, there's a lot of unmarked graves and undocumented deaths. And the former Glen Mills Reformatory School is no exception. It has a cemetery on the grounds. It is known as Glen Mills School Cemetery. It is located right on site of the property. It was established to bury boys who died at the school, but whose remains were not claimed by their families. All the individuals buried there were African American. The graves were originally marked with simple stones, but in the late 1970s, the school's director ordered replacement markers that bore the names of the young men buried there. I was able to find a little bit of information um, on at least one person who was buried there. His name is Edward Smith. He was born in 1881 and he died in 1895. He was only 14 years old.
Hmm.
He was uh, committed to the Glen Mills Reformatory Facility at 8 years old. He was born in Philadelphia. His parents had died. He had no living relatives. And as I said, this was supposed to be a compassionate place
Yeah.
originally. And because of that, he was moved into this school. But he was committed there at 8 and he died at 14.
Ugh,
And that is all the information that is left. And I was able to find that on Find a Grave.
that is sad.
Because a lot of these schools back in the day were used as industrial schools.
Yeah.
So,
So it is a big campus. They're only allowing day work now.
yes.
Did they move the cemetery or is it still there
No,
on the property?
it's still there. It's still there on the property.
Mm.
Yep. And I mean, I do commend them for the fact that instead of having the cemetery just having the unknown markers and everything else in the
Yeah,
70s, they actually established markers. They put the names on there. It has the dates for the boys, and so they're not forgotten. So I do commend them about that
that's
because
good.
at the end of the day, you can find out who they are.
I mean,
It doesn't give you a ton, but you can find out something about them.
it's better than the body shoot out of the what's that asylum in Kentucky?
Oh,
What is it?
Waverly,
Yes, Waverly Sanitarium. They used to have
yes.
a body shoot out of there.
No.
Still sad. I mean, yeah, it's good they recognize their name, but I mean, I really wish they would have done something to prevent them dying in the first place.
Yeah. And you don't know what conditions were back then,
Yeah,
um,
yeah,
and like what really contributed to it. I just thought it was really sad because, as I said, a lot of these schools were supposed to be reformatory schools, but in reality,
mhm,
they just took in kids who were orphaned and they had nowhere to go and they had no parents or they came from poverty. And they usually stole something or did something because they had no other choice, especially back in the day in the early 1800s.
yeah,
Um, and then they had to live in some place where you get bullied or beaten, or, you were supposed to repent and you had no sins to really repent for.
yeah. I think I'm going to lean on the easy victims for them to make money off of, and then to further make money off of once they got pulled into NFL, right? Because
Oh yeah.
you
I
know they got
said,
to pay back for that too.
oh
Had to.
yeah, like who's going to look at this star athlete and say, okay, well he's going to get thrown here for truancy
Yeah.
and Philadelphia has to pay $53,000 a year in order to pay for
Uh,
him to be there. Like
ugh.
Like one of the it's interesting. I would encourage people to look at the videos and read the articles because in 2019, one of the guys who was in there and one of the first five, he's young. He's only like in his early 20s. And
Oh
he went from
my.
being boisterous and this star athlete to being very meek and not and being very introverted and soft-spoken, and he just doesn't talk much. Like it completely, you can see it completely shattered him being there.
That's terrible. I hate this.
Yeah.
One of the reasons why I hated the movie Mystic River. I don't know if you've seen that or not, but
I have
yeah,
seen that. I have seen that. Yeah, no.
I don't like it.
Nope.
I don't like it. I don't, I mean, it's a good movie for your audience, but I don't recommend it. It's disturbing. It's one of those that I won't watch again.
Yeah, no.
Ah,
But I
yeah.
would, at the end of the day, so reform schools were built on belief that discipline could reshape a child's future. But at a place like Glen Mills, that belief hardened into something else, something colder, something harder to define. And for many who lived through it, something that never truly ended after they walked out of the gates, because some places don't just close, they echo. And it doesn't
Yeah.
go away, unfortunately.
Yeah. And this is most definitely an echo, especially if they're just reopening it up for another program.
One of the guys, one of the first other plaintiffs, he was a graduate of like 1986 and he
Hmm.
had the same treatment. He's like, it did nothing for me. It didn't rehabilitate me, made me worse. He had PTSD. He said he still lives with it every single day. Um, it's really, I would highly encourage people to watch the videos of their testimonials because it is really heart-wrenching because you can see somebody so young and then you can see somebody in their 40s and how it just
Yeah.
kind of decimated both of them.
It makes you wonder how many other reform schools are out there today that have been doing the same thing.
I mean, there's so many documentaries of reform schools that they sent
Hmm.
teenagers to, not necessarily it's when where parents had to give up their rights to send them to these reform schools and everything else, and they
Oh yeah.
paid for it, not necessarily state funded in any way. And it is horrifying. I mean, celebrities talk about it. Drew Barrymore talks about it in
Yeah.
her experience.
Hmm.
Paris Hilton talks about her
Oh, I
experience.
didn't know she had one. Okay.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's a lot of people who talk about their experiences with these reformatory schools. Um, and, it's maybe not something like the Quaker one where it did actually do quite a bit of good, apparently, for over 2 centuries. But
Hmm.
these other get quick reformatory things where they take those kids out into the desert and everything else and almost kill them. Yeah, those kind of things.
Yeah.
So everybody wants to fix their child, but, don't put them in an institution that's
No.
but a lot of these children, they didn't have any recourse. This was court ordered, at
Yeah,
least
I
for the
mean, they
Glen
don't have a
Mills one.
choice. They're
They
kids.
don't have a choice, but don't put your kid in one of those wilderness camps, please God. I just watched a documentary and I was horrified. I was like, just don't do
So,
that to your child.
so, so that's the next episode coming up, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh my.
I think we need a palate cleanser after this
I
one.
think so too. We're gonna have to find some lighthearted
Yeah.
something,
I need
something
I need
other.
some fairies. I need a Cthulhu episode. Like let's do
All
like
right, we're gonna do something lighthearted because this one is pretty heavy.
yeah.
I am gonna watch the videos because I think it deserves some light, and I'm probably gonna start sending some letters to cancel this whatever their new program is because it can't be good.
Yeah. I
Um,
need I need something like a fairy, an HP, HP Lovecraft,
we could find something on some fairies for
something
sure,
like
for
something else
sure.
that's gonna
We've got
that's
what the
gonna
summers.
reinvigorate my soul.
Yeah, we got the summer solstice coming up. That's
We
high prime
do.
time fairy season.
Okay.
So we're gonna.
I was like,
Yeah.
I need something to invigorate me after this because I
Although fairies
researched
can be
this
dark too.
for quite a few
Yeah,
nights, and my child was like, "Are you okay?" And I was like, "I love you."
I love you. I'm
Like,
not sending you anywhere, sir. I don't care how
yeah,
talented you are.
yeah,
Uh,
I know.
all right, we're gonna do some kind of fairy, something lighthearted, folks. So
Yeah,
thank you for hanging in there with us on this critically valuable but sad
yeah.
thing. So
We love you, and please
we
listen
love
to
you.
us next time.
Yeah, come back.
Yes, come back, please.